Snow Treasure, Chapter 27. Near the cliff, Peter could see the bulky figure of the commandant, the head of the German forces at Ryswick. He was picking his way up the valley. Peter and Lovisa continued playing in the snow. Peter had begun a snowman, and Lovisa was making hers a fancy hat. They wanted to get up and start for home, but they didn't dare move. They felt they would be less noticed if they stayed where they were. The commandant came puffing along. He seemed to have trouble lifting his feet in the deep snow. In his hand he carried a light little cane, a swagger stick. He plodded along until he came to the children. When he got there, he stopped in his tracks. "If you'd only go on," Peter growled to himself. But he didn't dare look up to see. His hands were busy with the snow. His head was hot and his mouth dry, and there was a buzzing in his ears. What would happen now? What if the commandant found the bricks buried under the snowmen? Why, there were more than 1,000,000 kroner right here at their feet. "We're searching for a German infantryman," the commandant announced to the children. "Have any of you seen a man in these woods?" Of course, there was no answer. He turned aside to whisper a few words to Lieutenant Sitdown. Then he spoke to the children in a loud voice. "I said, we are looking for a German infantryman. It's very important for you children to tell if you've seen one on this part of the coast. There's a severe penalty attached if anyone has seen him and has not reported it." Still the children said nothing. "I've a good mind to give you children a lesson in manners." His voice was angry. "When you're spoken to, it's only right that you should answer. Has no one taught you that? Now then, yes or no? Have you seen a German infantry soldier in this fjord?" The children acted as if they had not heard him. Lovisa sat back on her heels to admire her handiwork. But Peter, for all he tried to be cool, felt a terrible thumping in his chest. His cheeks must be red as rowan berries, for if any snowman were to be knocked down— The commandant strode across the snow and stood above Lovisa. "Little girl, tell me, did you or did you not see a German infantryman?" He screamed in anger. "Answer me!" Lovisa only turned her big blue eyes up at him. Not so much as a nod did she give him. "Don't you know I can make you talk? Don't you realize that we Germans can make anyone do our will? We've only to command to be obeyed." Peter remembered the pact they had made that day they had started their undertaking. They had sworn on the sword they wouldn't give information about what they were doing. Of course, this wasn't the same. But even so, they weren't to talk to the Germans for fear they would say something to make them suspicious. But no need to worry about Lovisa. Pledge or not, she wouldn't talk. The commandant's eye fell. There was something he didn't like about Lovisa's snowman. "Bah, you Norwegians!" With his stick, he slashed off the snowman's head. It was as if he would do the same to Lovisa's. Then he raised the stick and cut the snowman neatly in two. The upper part rolled beside the head, only the haunches remained. "Down you go," he shouted in his rage, "just the way all people who stand in our Führer's way. The way Norway goes, and Holland, and Belgium, and France, and England, and all countries that oppose the German will." Lovisa was near to tears, Peter could tell, but she winked them back. "Now, little girl," the commandant went on, "you see what will happen to all your people if you do not help the good Germans who have come to save you from the hardships your country makes you endure." "Hardships?" Peter had to bite his tongue to keep from saying. "It's you who bring the hardships, you with your talk of the good Germans." "So, little girl, let this be a lesson." The high officer was still in a rage. "Unless you want yourself and all who belong to you to go rolling over like that, and that, and that." He began kicking the stump of Lovisa's snowman. The snow flew out in a shower. With each kick, Peter winced, for the commandant's foot could only be a few inches from her two bricks. In their haste that day, they had not been able to bury deep, but had to count on the snowmen to hide the gold. The high officer had evidently decided to give Lovisa a thorough lesson before he lifted his foot for another kick. Like a football player, he stood back to swing at what was left of the snow figure. In another minute he'll stub his toe against the bricks, Peter thought. Then he gathered up a handful of snow. He rolled it into a hard ball. Then he stood back and took aim. It landed exactly on the commandant's right ear, as Peter meant it should. Then Peter took to his heels and ran for the woods.